Jake Turner stood nervously in the grand entrance hall of the Intergalactic Academy, his eyes wide as he took in the towering walls and the strange, otherworldly beings that walked past him. He had never seen anything like this before. This was it, the moment every human had waited for. Earth's first student at the prestigious Galactic Academy, a place where the brightest minds from all corners of the universe came to study. The hallway buzzed with voices speaking languages Jake couldn't even begin to understand, and the air was thick with the sound of alien creatures, each more bizarre and intimidating than the next. Jake, a young man with the appearance of an average Earthling, was almost invisible among these extraordinary beings. His dark brown hair and plain blue jacket stood out like a sore thumb. He had no glowing markings, no cybernetic enhancements, and certainly no alien-like features. He was just a human. As he walked through the hall, his heart beat in his chest, thumping with excitement but also anxiety. Around him, the aliens turned their heads, their eyes lingering on him for a moment before they quickly turned away, exchanging whispers behind their hands. Some of them even smirked, clearly amused by the human who had somehow made it to their school. The students from more advanced species, with their enhanced physiques and technology built into their very bodies, viewed Jake as a curiosity. Some mocked him quietly, others whispered about how weak humanity must be. To them, the idea of a human being in the same academic institution was almost laughable. What could Earth possibly offer? What use was a species that still relied on primitive technology like vehicles and tools made of metal? Jake was painfully aware of the stares, the whispers, and the quiet laughter, but he kept his head down and moved forward, determined not to let their opinions bother him. It was during the first week that Jake began to notice something peculiar. While the other students used sophisticated medical equipment to heal small wounds or injuries, Jake didn't rush to any high-tech clinics or use fancy devices. One afternoon, after accidentally cutting his hand on a sharp piece of equipment, Jake simply stepped aside and pulled out a basic medical kit. It was a small, simple set, a few sterilizing wipes, thread, and a needle. He began to stitch wound himself with steady hands, his movements slow but precise. As he worked, he glanced up at his classmates who were watching him from a distance. They had never seen anything like it. Some were puzzled. Others looked on in disbelief. A few of the more arrogant students exchanged looks, raising their brows, clearly thinking this human was more foolish than they had originally thought. Why would anyone in their right mind choose to perform such a mundane, simple procedure when they had access to the most advanced healing technology in the galaxy? Jake's calmness and focus were almost unsettling. To the alien students who were used to relying on complex devices, his ability to calmly care for himself using only basic tools was a sign of something they couldn't quite understand. What the aliens didn't know, however, was that it was not the tools that made the human capable, it was his inner strength. As Jake finished stitching the wound, he took a deep breath and stood up, wiping his hands on a cloth. He didn't boast, nor did he react to the stunned stares. Instead, he simply moved on with his day, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His nonchalance seemed to irritate some of the aliens, who couldn't grasp why he wasn't showing any signs of weakness, fear, or discomfort. But Jake wasn't concerned with their opinions. Each day, as the Academy's courses became more demanding, Jake continued to push through the challenges. His strength wasn't just physical, it was mental. While the other students quickly grew frustrated or relied heavily on their technology, Jake's ability to stay calm and composed in the face of adversity began to earn him a quiet respect. The students, initially so eager to dismiss him, were starting to watch him with curiosity. The more they saw Jake handle difficult situations with a quiet, unshakable confidence, the more they started to wonder if humanity's strength lay in something deeper than they had first thought. Something they couldn't see but could feel. Something that, despite all their advanced technologies, no alien race had quite mastered. And as the days passed, the whispers of ridicule slowly began to fade, replaced by the first seeds of respect. The Academy had no idea yet, but they were about to learn that humanity, in all its seeming simplicity, was far from weak. The day of the field simulation arrived with a heavy air of excitement and tension that seemed to wrap the entire Academy in its grip. The students were told that they would be dropped onto a dangerous, untamed planet, filled with hostile wildlife and unforgiving terrain. Their task was simple: survive and make it to the extraction point. The Academy's instructors, who were not known for their mercy, smiled grimly as they introduced the challenge. Jake Turner, as usual, found himself at the center of attention. He had been placed in a team with 3 of the most arrogant, elite alien students, the ones who had openly mocked him since his arrival. They were the best of the best, each from species that had mastered technology far beyond anything Earth could even imagine. They wore sleek, high-tech armor, had devices embedded into their bodies, and carried all sorts of advanced gadgets that could scan, analyze, and heal almost any injury. When Jake entered the team, they exchanged glances, rolling their eyes as if his presence was a joke. To them, he was a burden, an inconvenient human who didn't belong. As they were dropped onto the wild planet, the atmosphere became immediately thick with danger. The ground was uneven and treacherous, the air humid with mist, and the trees loomed tall and twisted. The alien students, who had all relied heavily on their tech, activated their advanced equipment, scanning the area for any signs of threats. With a touch of a button, their weapons locked and loaded, their comm devices synchronized. They were ready for anything. But Jake, he had no fancy gadgets, just a basic survival kit strapped to his waist. The moment the simulation began, things immediately went awry. A large creature, resembling a cross between a giant lizard and a bird, charged out from the underbrush, screeching loudly. The alien students quickly engaged, firing blasts from their weapons, but the creature was fast. It darted and weaved through the forest, avoiding their attacks with ease. As they scrambled to keep up, one of their advanced scanners malfunctioned, throwing off their ability to track the creature. Panic began to creep into their voices. They were frustrated. They were vulnerable without their tech. Jake, however, had a different approach. Calmly observing the situation, he noticed a pattern in the creature's movements. It wasn't randomly attacking. It was driven by a territorial instinct, protecting its nest nearby. Instead of continuing to chase it, Jake calmly took out his survival kit and began to set up a simple trap, using nothing but rope and a few nearby branches. His team watched in disbelief as Jake worked with speed and precision. The alien students looked at each other, unsure of what he was doing. They had no time to waste, or so they thought, but within moments the trap was ready. Jake signaled to his team to step back, and with a slight flick of the rope, the creature was caught, trapped in a snare. The team stared at him, their mouths agape. They hadn't even considered that approach. As the creature struggled, Jake remained calm, ensuring no harm came to it, just enough to keep it subdued until they were ready to move on. The simulation wasn't over, though. As they continued deeper into the wild planet, the challenges only grew more intense. Violent weather patterns rolled in, with gusts of wind strong enough to knock them off their feet. The alien students activated their weather-resistant shields, but one by one, their gadgets began to malfunction. Their shields flickered, their communication devices went dead, and their tracking systems went haywire. Without their tech, they were just as vulnerable as anyone else. It was Jake's turn to step up again. While the others struggled with the elements and their broken equipment, he used simple tools to secure a shelter. He understood the terrain, using his knowledge of Earth's ecosystems to find safe cover and keep them dry. The alien students, who had spent so much time depending on their technology, began to realize how helpless they were. They were out of their element. They needed Jake's resourcefulness to navigate the chaos. By the time the extraction point was in sight, the group was exhausted, their bodies battered by the planet's harsh conditions. Their technology had failed them, and they were far behind schedule. But Jake, with his calm demeanor and practical skills, guided them the rest of the way. With the final stretch ahead, Jake's team was the last one standing. The other students, beaten and broken, relied entirely on Jake to get them to safety. As they reached the extraction point, the alien students who had once looked at Jake with disdain now saw him in a different light. He had saved them, not with advanced technology, but with human ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a determination they had not yet fully understood. They were silent, humbled by the unexpected strength they had witnessed. They had thought Jake was weak. They had been wrong. The scavenger hunt was the Academy's most anticipated event of the year, a competition that tested students' resourcefulness, bravery, and survival skills. It was not just a simple race. It was a dangerous adventure through a deadly alien jungle filled with terrifying creatures and unpredictable landscapes. Each team was given the task of retrieving rare resources from the heart of the jungle, and the first team to return with their items would win. For most students, the hunt was a way to prove their worth and abilities. For Jake Turner, it was another chance to show that human ingenuity could rival even the most advanced species. Jake's team, once again, was made up of some of the most skilled and arrogant students at the Academy. The leader of the group, Lantor, was a highly respected alien from a race known for their advanced technology and combat expertise. Lantor had made his opinions of Jake very clear since the beginning of their partnership. "You're not even close to being advanced enough for this, human," he would often sneer. "You'll just slow us down. Stay out of the way." Jake, however, wasn't deterred. He had learned that words meant little in a world where actions spoke louder. So, when the hunt began and the teams were dropped into the thick, humid jungle, Jake kept his focus. The alien jungle was a maze of thick vines, towering trees, and alien predators lurking in the shadows. Lantor, with his cocky demeanor, immediately relied on his high-tech scanning equipment to find the rare resource. "Stay close," Lantor ordered, already several steps ahead. "I know exactly where it is." But as they ventured deeper into the jungle, things took a dangerous turn. The trees began to sway violently, and the air grew thick with tension. Suddenly, a massive creature, half reptile, half insect, charged from the underbrush, its teeth bared and eyes glowing with hunger. Lantor's weapon system automatically activated, but it wasn't fast enough. The creature was too quick. It lunged at Lantor, knocking him to the ground with terrifying force. His teammates froze, unsure of how to react. Their fancy technology didn't seem to be much use in this situation. Lantor, struggling beneath the creature, shouted for help, his voice laced with panic. His weapons malfunctioned in the chaos, and his tech-enhanced suit was no match for the sheer power of the beast. His pride was shattered in an instant. He, the mighty Lantor, was now at the mercy of a creature that didn't care for his superiority. While the rest of the team hesitated, Jake's mind raced. He had no fancy gadgets to fall back on, but he didn't need them. He had learned to rely on his instincts. Without a second thought, Jake sprinted toward the creature, scanning the surroundings for any advantage. He spotted a series of sharp, jagged rocks near a cliffside. With a quick movement, he grabbed a length of vine from the jungle floor, tying it securely around the rocks. Then, he set up a simple but effective trap. It was a basic snare, but it would do the job. The creature, still struggling with Lantor, roared in anger, its focus completely on the alien. Jake's trap was ready. As the creature lunged toward Lantor once more, Jake tugged the vine, and the rocks came crashing down, trapping the creature in a tangled mass of vines and boulders. The predator let out a howl of defeat before collapsing, momentarily stunned. Lantor, gasping for air, scrambled to his feet. He looked at Jake, his face flushed with a mixture of disbelief and irritation. You saved me?" he asked, clearly unable to grasp the concept of a human being capable of such quick thinking. Jake nodded, his face calm. "We have to keep moving," he said simply. As they continued deeper into the jungle, Lantor's pride took another hit. When the team reached the rare resource they were tasked to retrieve, Lantor had no idea how to approach the delicate retrieval process. He attempted to use his high-tech tools, but they malfunctioned once again, unable to adjust to the unpredictable conditions of the jungle. Jake, however, simply knelt down and began working with the environment. Using his knowledge of Earth's natural elements, he gathered the right materials, fashioned a tool, and carefully extracted the resource from its hiding spot. It wasn't advanced technology or flashy gadgets, just raw human ingenuity. Lantor, though he would never admit it aloud, watched in stunned silence, realizing that Jake's methods, his simple, efficient approach, were far more effective than anything his technology had offered. When they finally returned to the academy with the rare resource in hand, the other students looked at them in surprise. Jake's team had completed the challenge, against all odds. Lantor, his pride wounded but his respect begrudgingly earned, gave Jake a single, nodding glance. He didn't speak, but the message was clear. He had underestimated the human, and now he knew better. Jake's team had won, not because of superior technology, but because of the human ability to think on their feet, adapt to any situation, and fight through adversity. And as the other teams filed in, looking battered and defeated, they couldn't help but whisper amongst themselves. The human, Jake Turner, was not someone to be underestimated. The Academy's physical training exercises were intense, designed to push every student to their limits. Today, the students were tasked with a complex agility course, filled with obstacles that tested their reflexes, strength, and endurance. Jake Turner, though not as physically imposing as many of his alien peers, had quickly proven himself in previous challenges. But this course was more demanding than anything he'd faced before. Jake moved through the course with determination, his eyes focused on each step ahead. He ducked under low beams, leapt across chasms, and scaled towering walls with ease. The top alien students, many of them effortlessly gliding over the obstacles, watched him closely, some of them amused by his attempts to keep up. They thought him slow, primitive, someone who wouldn't last long under pressure. But Jake's calmness and adaptability had kept him in the game. It wasn't until he reached the final obstacle, a tricky series of swinging platforms, that things took an unexpected turn. Jake miscalculated his jump, his foot catching the edge of one of the swinging platforms. The sudden shift threw him off balance, and before he could recover, he fell to the ground, landing hard on his side. A sharp pain shot through his leg as he felt the skin tear beneath him. He winced but quickly clenched his jaw, refusing to show any sign of weakness. The alien students, who had been watching from the sidelines, immediately rushed toward him. Their first instinct was to call for a medic, to use their advanced technology, to heal him on the spot. "Jake, are you all right? We need to get a medic," one of them called out, his voice laced with concern. Another alien student frantically reached for a communicator, ready to signal for medical assistance. But Jake waved them off before they could make the call. His expression remained calm as he slowly sat up, his leg throbbing but not enough to deter him. "It's fine," Jake said quietly, his voice steady. He reached into his backpack without hesitation and pulled out a small, basic first aid kit. Nothing more than a few bandages, some antiseptic, and a simple stitching kit. The alien students paused, staring at him in confusion. They had never seen anything like it. As the rest of the students stood frozen in surprise, Jake began to work, his movements slow but purposeful. He cleaned the wound on his leg with steady hands, ignoring the pain that shot up each time he touched the injury. Then, with an almost practiced precision, he threaded the needle and began to stitch the wound closed. There were no high-tech tools, no holographic bandages, no instant healing devices, just a human using basic tools, the way his species had done for centuries. The alien students watched in complete silence, their gazes shifting from Jake's hands to his face, and back to his work. They were used to technology that could heal wounds in an instant, devices that could scan injuries and provide an instant diagnosis. They had seen aliens of various species suffer injuries far worse than Jake's, and within moments, their advanced healing devices would have fixed them. But Jake wasn't using anything like that. He was handling the pain, stitching up his wound as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. The aliens exchanged uncertain glances. They were used to seeing creatures like themselves, advanced, reliant on technology for survival, but Jake was different. He wasn't relying on anything but himself. His calm efficiency, the way he handled the pain without a single sign of distress, left them in awe. It wasn't the simplicity of his method that struck them. It was the sheer mental fortitude he demonstrated. To these students, accustomed to their gadgets and high-tech solutions, Jake's actions were an alien concept in themselves. He wasn't just surviving the injury. He was embracing it, taking control, and overcoming it with his own willpower. As Jake finished the final stitch, he looked up at the group of students, his face still calm and composed. "It's done," he said simply, as if stitching up his leg was the most natural thing in the world. He slowly stood up, testing his sobbed weight on the injured leg. It hurt, but he could walk. The silence that followed was thick with disbelief. The students, still in shock, didn't know what to say. They had watched him perform something that, to them, seemed impossible without advanced technology. But Jake had done it with nothing more than his own hands. One of the students, who had been closest to Jake during the training, stepped forward. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. You just stitched yourself up. No devices, no scanners. You just did it." There was awe in his voice, and a new understanding was beginning to take root. Jake shrugged slightly, not looking for praise. "Sometimes you don't need tech to solve a problem," he said quietly. "You just need to think and trust yourself." The alien students were left speechless, their minds racing as they tried to comprehend the depth of what they had witnessed. To them, the idea of handling an injury without advanced technology seemed outdated, even reckless. But Jake had proven that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in machines or devices, but in the mind and the ability to endure. As they turned to leave, they couldn't shake the image of Jake's calm face, stitching himself up without hesitation. They had underestimated him before, but now they realized that the human's true power didn't come from gadgets or magic. It came from his ability to face adversity with unshakable resolve. The final exam at the academy, the trial of will, was unlike anything Jake Turner had faced before. A grueling test designed to push the students to their mental and physical limits, it was a competition that separated the truly resilient from those who relied on technology to do the heavy lifting. The trial consisted of a series of challenges, obstacles, that tested not only the body but the mind. Students were forced to confront their personal fears, endure extreme physical discomfort, and outlast each other in a battle of pure willpower. Most students, especially the more advanced aliens, depended on their superior technology to give them an edge, devices to enhance their endurance, shields to protect them from harm, and healing tech to patch up any wounds. But Jake didn't have any of that. He had only his mind and body, and that was enough for him. As the trial began, the students were thrust into a dark chamber, the temperature plummeting and the atmosphere heavy with an oppressive silence. The first challenge was designed to test their physical limits. They had to run a marathon-like course, pushing their bodies through harsh terrain and avoiding sudden bursts of extreme heat. The alien students surged ahead, their enhanced suits providing them with constant stamina boosts and protection from the environment. Jake, however, was relying only on his natural abilities. His breath came heavy, His muscles burned with every step, and the pain in his legs felt unbearable. But Jake kept moving. His focus was singular: complete the trial. With each passing hour, the number of students dwindled. Many of the aliens, accustomed to technology doing the hard work for them, began to falter. Some dropped out after the first stage, unable to handle the stress on their bodies without the aid of their enhancements. Others, overwhelmed by the strain, succumbed to exhaustion, lying down to rest, hoping for a reprieve. But Jake? He kept going. His face was covered in sweat. His body pushed beyond what most thought possible. But he never slowed down. Each time his legs threatened to give way, he gritted his teeth and took another step. Every time his mind begged him to stop, he silenced it, focusing only on the task ahead. He didn't need gadgets or tech. What he had was far more powerful: determination. The second stage of the trial of will took a more psychological approach. The students were placed in individual pods, each filled with their worst fears, visions, sounds, and experiences designed to break them mentally. For the alien students, their fear simulations were tailored to their species, based on their deepest insecurities. For Jake, it was the fear of being completely alone, stranded with no one to rely on, abandoned and forgotten. The voices in the pod whispered doubts into his mind, trying to break his resolve. The fear clawed at him, the isolation sinking in like cold fingers wrapping around his chest. But Jake refused to let it win. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, focusing on the fact that he wasn't truly alone. He had come so far, and he wasn't about to let some illusion take him down. Slowly, he quieted the fear and pushed through the experience, determined to finish. By the time the final challenge arrived, Jake's body was on the brink of collapse. His legs were like lead, his breathing labored, and the mental strain was beginning to catch up to him. He was far behind the other students now, but he kept moving, step after painful step. The last obstacle was a test of endurance, an arena filled with relentless waves of physical tests. They would have to lift heavy weights, climb walls, and hold difficult poses, all while being bombarded with distractions. The alien students, their bodies protected by tech-enhanced suits, breezed through the task. But Jake had no such luxuries. He could feel the strain on his muscles, the sharp pangs in his chest, and the dizziness creeping in. Yet, he refused to stop. His hands shook as he grasped the weight, but he held it in place, his muscles screaming in protest. As the final minutes ticked away, the alien students who had once looked down on him were watching in awe. They had thought Jake would crumble under the pressure, but instead, he was proving them wrong in the most powerful way. His human grit was something they had never anticipated. His body, frail compared to their species, kept moving when theirs had long given out. His mind, focused and sharp, pushed past every barrier, defying what seemed possible. The trial came to a close, and though Jake didn't finish first, he was still standing. The alien students who had used their technology to breeze through the challenge were left stunned. Jake had outlasted many of them, not because of technology, but because of the sheer force of his will. They had expected to see weakness, to see him falter, but instead, they had witnessed something far more profound: a human's unyielding persistence, the ability to endure not just physical pain, but mental anguish as well. The aliens who had once seen humanity as primitive now looked at Jake with a newfound respect. They hadn't just seen a human survive. They had seen him achieve greatness with nothing but his mind and body. Jake Turner had taught them that the greatest strength was not in what one had, but in the will to keep going, no matter the odds. After the grueling trial of will, Jake Turner felt the exhaustion seep into his bones, but he was far from broken. The alien students who had watched him throughout the competition now looked at him differently. No longer as the weak, primitive human they had once dismissed, but as something far more impressive, a force of sheer determination. As he walked toward the academy's central courtyard to rest, a small group of students gathered in front of him, including Lantor. Lantor, the once arrogant and dismissive alien, now stood with a look of respect in his eyes. "You did it," Lantor said quietly, his tone no longer mocking but sincere. "You made it through, without any of the advantages we have. I don't understand. How do you keep going, even when you're at such a disadvantage?" Jake paused for a moment, looking at the group that had once ridiculed him. There was no arrogance in their eyes now, just genuine curiosity and a hint of admiration. He took a deep breath and then spoke, his voice steady and unwavering. "It's simple," Jake began, his eyes meeting each one of theirs. "Humanity has always been defined by our ability to overcome adversity. No matter how difficult the challenge, how impossible the situation, we never give up. We fight, because we know that struggle is what makes us stronger. It's the one thing we can always rely on, the will to survive. Our strength doesn't come from technology. It comes from our drive to keep going, even when we have nothing left." The group was silent for a moment, each of them processing what Jake had said. Lantor, his arms crossed and his eyes narrowed in thought, took a step forward. "I've seen many species fight," he admitted, his voice a mixture of awe and newfound respect. "But none of them have fought like humans. We rely on our technology, our enhancements, our abilities. You fought with nothing but your will, your mind. I never thought I'd say this, but I have to admit, I was wrong about humans." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of Lantor's words settle in. It wasn't the first time he had been underestimated, but hearing this from Lantor, someone who had once thought so little of him, was something different. "It's not about being stronger or smarter," Jake said, his gaze steady. "It's about the refusal to give up. We keep fighting, no matter the odds. It's that resilience that's in our nature, and that's what makes humans so strong." One of the other students, a tall and slender alien from a distant star system, spoke up. "I used to think humanity was weak, just a primitive species with no place among the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. But now, I see you've got something none of us have. The ability to adapt, to learn, and to keep going when everything seems impossible." Jake smiled, though he was tired. "We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But we always find a way to rise up. No matter how many times we fall, we always get back up." The group exchanged looks, their earlier mockery and dismissiveness melting away into genuine respect. The alien students who had once scoffed at Jake now saw him in an entirely new light. It wasn't his physical strength or his ability to use advanced technology that impressed them. It was his unbreakable spirit. His determination had transcended the limits of what they thought possible, and they now realized that it was that very trait that made him and humanity special. Lantor took a step forward and extended his hand to Jake, his expression solemn. "I misjudged you, Jake Turner. I thought humans were weak, but now I know the truth. You're stronger than any of us. You fought through this trial with nothing but yourself, and you came out victorious. I'm honored to have witnessed it." Jake shook Lantor's hand, feeling the sincerity in the gesture. "Thanks," he said quietly. "I guess we're not as weak as we look, huh?" Lantor chuckled softly, a genuine smile crossing his face for the first time. "Not at all," he replied. "I've learned that the hard way." The rest of the group nodded in agreement. The once dismissive students, who had once seen Jake as a curiosity, now looked at him with admiration. They had witnessed his strength, not in his physical abilities, but in the depth of his spirit, the quiet confidence that came from knowing that no matter how dire the situation, a human would always find a way to survive. As the group dispersed, Jake stood there for a moment, reflecting on everything that had happened. He wasn't here to prove anyone wrong. He had simply been doing what humans do best, pushing through, no matter the cost. But in doing so, he had earned the respect of those who had once thought him weak, and in their eyes he had shown them the true strength of humanity. The reckoning had come, and humanity had passed the test, not through strength, but through will. As the final days of the academy year drew near, the atmosphere was charged with excitement. The grand ceremony, a celebration of the students' accomplishments, was the event everyone had been waiting for. The once quiet halls now buzzed with activity as each student prepared for their moment in the spotlight. Jake Turner, the human, who had once been viewed as nothing more than a curiosity, stood in the midst of the festivities, quietly reflecting on everything he had endured over the past year. He had gone from being the object of mockery to a symbol of strength and perseverance, and as he glanced around at the students, alien and human alike, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. At the start of the ceremony, the students were called to the stage one by one to receive their awards. For most, it was a celebration of their academic achievements or physical prowess, honors that came easily with advanced technology or natural abilities. But as the ceremony wore on, the audience grew restless, waiting for the final award of the evening, the Resilience Medal. This prestigious honor was given to the student who best exemplified the spirit of perseverance, the student who had faced the most adversity, overcome the greatest obstacles, and emerged stronger for it. The crowd had a sense that this year, the winner would not be who they expected. Jake stood at the back of the room, blending in as usual. The eyes of his classmates, many of whom had once scoffed at him, now held a mixture of respect and admiration. They saw him not just as a student, but as a testament to the unyielding strength that defined humanity. The quiet confidence with which Jake carried himself, the way he had faced every challenge head-on, and the determination he had shown, had left an indelible mark on everyone who had witnessed his journey. They all knew that the award for resilience would be given to him. Finally, as the headmaster stepped forward with the gleaming medal in hand, the crowd fell silent. Jake's heart beat loudly in his chest, but he didn't show any signs of nervousness. His journey had been anything but easy, but it had been worth every struggle. The headmaster called his name, and for the first time in his life, Jake felt the weight of recognition, the kind that came not from his intellect or his strength, but from his very spirit. Jake Turner, for your unbreakable will, your determination, and your ability to persevere when all odds were against you, it is my honor to award you the Resilience Medal, the headmaster announced. The applause that erupted was deafening. Jake walked slowly to the stage, his legs feeling heavier than ever, but the pride in his chest made every step worth it. As he took the medal, he looked out at the crowd. His alien classmates, once so dismissive of him, were now cheering him on, their expressions filled with admiration. Lantor, who had once seen him as weak, now stood with a smile of genuine respect. It wasn't just the award that had changed Jake's life. It was the journey itself, the way he had shown everyone that true strength wasn't measured by technology, power, or status, but by the will to survive against all odds. Jake turned to face the crowd, holding the medal high. "I didn't win this because I'm stronger than anyone else," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "I won this because I refused to give up. And that's what makes humans different. We might not have the technology or the powers of other species, but we have something that no one else can replicate. The ability to keep going, no matter how hard it gets." The crowd fell silent for a moment before erupting into another round of applause. Jake's words had struck a chord with everyone in the room. His resilience, his determination, and his refusal to let anything defeat him had shown the galaxy that humanity's true power lay in its unbreakable spirit. The alien students who had once thought little of him now saw that human strength wasn't in their advanced technology or their vast civilizations. It was in their heart, in their will to push forward against every challenge, no matter the cost. As the ceremony drew to a close, Jake stood on the stage, looking out at his classmates. He had started this journey as the outsider, the odd one out, but he was leaving as something much more important, a symbol of humanity's greatest strength. He wasn't just a student at the academy anymore. He was a living testament to the fact that no matter how different they were, humanity had something no one else could match. Jake Turner had shown the galaxy that the greatest power of all wasn't found in technology or advanced races. It was found in the human spirit, the unyielding will to survive. The applause continued, and Jake, with a smile on his face, knew one thing for certain. Humanity had made its mark in a way no one would ever forget.